What's up, Astro fam? This is your girl Megan from the HoodAstroQ, and today I am going to be doing a video on the 5 worst aspects in Synastry. In my opinion, of course, right? Now, I'm doing this video because I do often get a lot of questions in regards to what are some of the worst aspects that you've ever seen while doing Synastry readings? What are some aspects that people should potentially be on the lookout for? And so, although there are many, there are many, I've just narrowed it down to 5. My top 5 aspects that I typically look at as red flags when I'm doing Synastry interpretations. Now, they are in no specific order, but it's also important to understand that the way in which these aspects play out, right, and the weight that they have in the grand scheme of things will also be determined by other factors and other aspects and placements within that Synastry reading. So this is kind of like an isolated perspective, right? So just kind of keep that in mind, but still. So here we go. So number 1, Mars and negative aspect to Mars. So one individual having their Mars negatively aspecting their partner's Mars is a very difficult aspect, in my opinion, because this creates a relationship that is based and steeped in conflict. It could talk about or point towards a lot of tension. Now, sometimes this could be sexual tension, but it could also create a dynamic where the two partners are always at each other's throats, okay? Each partner is incredibly defensive against one another. Both individuals could want to take charge and set the tone for the relationship and are often operating out of 2 completely different modes of being. So there is always this push-pull kind of effect. Neither person really cares to entertain the viewpoints of their partner or any viewpoints that may be outside of their own. Their main intent is to protect and once again defend their stance. So this is not an aspect that is conducive to understanding or even being sympathetic to your partner's plight. Usually in relationships, there is a kind of a give and take going on, but both partners could be operating out of a mode where they want to take, and it's either my way or the highway. This could even create a relationship to where once a dagger is thrown, especially like if the two are engaged in conflict, everything turns into a pissing contest. This could even apply to careers, right? These couples could be very competitive with one another as well. So not only could there be kind of like a power struggle or like a, that kind of conflict from that perspective, but these are people where they kind of want to outdo each other. An example that I have for this is Ike Turner and Tina Turner. So Tina Turner has her Pisces Mars squaring Ike Turner Sagittarius Mars, which could point towards them having 2 completely different visions, especially in terms of their careers. Now, if you know anything about Ike Turner and Tina Turner, you'll know that they actually worked together for a while. They were a part of a band. I believe Ike discovered Tina and she was one of his backup singers for a while. And then she became what we know as Tina Turner. And I think it was like Tina, Ike Turner, and the Ike X. I'm not sure. But either way, they were on the road and had a musical career, shared musical career with one another for a very long time. But this square between both Tina and Ike's Mars points to where they were always on 2 different pages in regards to even how they wanted to approach their career, right? And I know if you are somebody who's watched What's Love Got to Do with It, they were often clashing over, and that actually triggered a lot of Ike's explosive temperament and his more abusive nature, which makes sense with that Sagittarius Mars, because these people can be very hostile and they can have really bad tempers that kind of fly off of the handle. But he would be really triggered when people would criticize his work or question his intent, because he had very specific visions, grand, I would say, visions for his career and his music and what he wanted things to be like and sound like. Very Sagittarius Mars. This could deal with Tina putting all of her faith in Ike to the point where she allowed herself to become enslaved, hence that Pisces Mars. Now, this could even point towards a incompatibility when it comes to their sex life and their way and their style of love making, if that's what you want to call it. Okay, you know, folks back in the day called it love making. Whereas Sagittarius Mars is very bullish, hypersexual, right? They almost have an insatiable appetite for sex. They can be like that. Whereas Tina, with that Pisces Mars, could have been somebody who was not that sexual at all. Her sex drive could have been very weak. Now, both Pisces Mars and Sagittarius Mars can be the type of individuals to walk around with their heads in the clouds, but Sagittarius Mars is a lot more dominant. Okay, they come off very strong, and they often like to project a lot of their own beliefs about things onto other people. Whereas that Pisces Mars is very passive. So once again, leading to this sense of like internal conflict to where they are always hell bent and pent up against one another. It's a very defensive kind of thing. And the way that Pisces Mars copes with this is to disassociate, to escape, to even allow themselves once again to be victimized, while Sagittarius Mars explodes. They can erupt into, once again, anger, violence, and also even jump to conclusions when it comes to a lot of things. So as you can see here, this is one of those aspects that can be a recipe for disaster. Now, the second most difficult aspect that I tend to see, or the worst aspect in synastry, is Mars and negative aspect to the moon. Now, of course, we can get into the negative aspects themselves, like the oppositions and the squares and the quincunxes and the sesqui-squares and the semi-squares, which will be a different video. I'm going to say that for a different video for a different day. Also, the sign placement matters. So even in my Ike Turner and Tina Turner example, right, with Tina being a Pisces Mars, obviously that's also going to modify these expressions. But once again, I just want you guys to keep in mind that this is just in a vacuum here. We're speaking about, isolated kind of interpretations, right? But when you have one partner whose Mars is in negative aspects to another person's moon, there is essentially a sense of inconsiderate kind of like behavior. Like the Mars person can be very inconsiderate of the moon individual's feelings. They could be tone deaf even to the moon person's needs. In fact, the moon individual could irritate the Mars partner and often create this feeling of smothering, right? Perhaps they could drain the Mars partner. But on the other hand, the Mars individual can be very selfish, very crass, very cutthroat, and just instinctively a very knee-jerk type of individual. Well, technically both can. So Moon and Mars are both very instinctive kind of planets, but they have two different ways of defending themselves. The Moon individual could clam up and kind of become closed off. They can also do a lot of nagging, and while the Mars person is just very, it's blunt. They can insult you. They can, in extreme cases, this can be violent, right? In the same way that Mars and negative aspect of Mars and synastry can be violent as well. But these are also people who could just straight up be like, if you're not talking about what I want to hear, fuck you. They know exactly what buttons to push with the moon person, and they know how to really hurt them and hit them where it hurts. And the moon individual has a difficult time recovering from those type of wounds or moving on from the things that have actually hurt them. And they also have a difficult time of letting people go. So even despite all of the abuse and the daggers and, just the different things being said, and these are people who are still probably going to stick around. So it could just be a very volatile relationship, and one person is really failing to get their needs met, their basic needs, okay? The moon person can really suffer the most in this type of and this type of interaction. And a lot of this also has to do with the fact that the moon partner really does internalize a lot of the Mars partner's actions, right? They take everything very, very personally, whether it was something that was intentional or, not so much intentional. But another way that this could play out is that the moon partner could even try to emotionally manipulate or blackmail the Mars individual who is very insensitive. And a lot of times the moon person needs a lot of reassurance that that Mars individual does not necessarily have the time nor patience to give, which is why a lot of times, the moon person could bring up things from the past and also resort to a lot of those emotional tactics, right, in order to invoke a response from that Mars person. But it backfires, and so it just leads to more hurt feelings, and things can get really messy really fast. So an example that I have for this particular aspect is, let's say we have a Gemini Mars male, right, and he's with a Virgo moon woman. So in this instance, the Gemini Mars male will be extremely harsh and insensitive with his words, with the way that he speaks to his Virgo moon woman, which in turn will trigger a lot of those insecurities associated with the Virgo moon woman. Okay, his words cut deep, and she will personalize and internalize a lot of the things that he said to her, which could also cause her to be very hard on herself. And although she may complain a lot about the nature of the relationship and what he did and, "Oh, you hurt me and that's not fair," she stays. She doesn't go anywhere. And the crux of his frustration with her is that he finds that she needs too much. She's very needy, and that she could even be a type of person who tries to not only just dampen a lot of the zest that he could have for life, but he may even find her to be too much of a control freak, because that Gemini Mars needs, once again, a lot of variety. They want a certain level of flexibility, and they need a certain level of accommodation, especially when we're talking about, exploring their sexual freedom and their just natural state of being. They could also be the type of person to want to spend a lot of time with their friends, while the Virgo moon woman wants him all to herself. I want you to assure me. I want you to make me feel good. And I want this relationship to go in the way in which I want it to go. I want control over the relationship to mitigate the possibility of me being further damaged. And that could just really be very taxing on the Gemini Mars man. He doesn't have, once again, the time nor the patience for it. He doesn't feel like holding her hand around the clock. So as you can see right there, that can just create a very difficult hurdle for that couple to overcome. That Gemini Mars man could really damage the Virgo moon woman. Now, the third worst aspect in synastry is the moon in negative aspects to Pluto, with an honorable mention to Venus or the ascendant in negative aspect to Pluto as well. But I chose the moon because the moon is a lot more personal, right? And it could have a deeper, I would even say a more profound impact on the moon individual's subconscious mind. Now, this aspect can create a constant struggle for power, which can make the moon individual very vulnerable to all kinds of mind games, and in many instances, overt or covert forms of abuse. Okay. The Pluto individual always needs the upper hand at all times. And because the moon individual fears abandonment, they usually let them have it. Not to mention, the moon individual kind of mimics or is very easily influenced by the Pluto partner as well. So it's not like they put up that much of a resistance. Now, although initially there could be a very strong and magnetic sexual attraction and chemistry, very similar to even that Mars negative aspect to Mars, as time goes on, right, sex could be a thing that is very much weaponized. The moon partner finds the Pluto partner to be very mysterious or edgy or a bad boy or a bad girl in the beginning, right? However, the Pluto individual learns that the moon of course, is very influential, or very easily influenced, I should say, right? But they'll also learn how to figure out what makes the moon person tick. They'll learn them inside and out very intentionally. And up front, the moon person loves the Pluto partner for their strength, and often finds their presence to be very therapeutic. And oh my God, they know me and they care about me, especially if the moon person has gone through some very difficult times, right? Confiding in and disclosing their innermost secrets and traumas to the Pluto partner could be very liberating and just, once again, very therapeutic to the moon individual. Not to mention that the moon person probably has a lot of baggage from the past. And I mean, the Pluto partner is almost always right there to help them unpack it. However, in the event that the moon person tries to show any sign of doing things on their own, or maybe even needing privacy, the Pluto person becomes suspicious, and they can be very exploitive. Okay, very exploitive, very manipulative, and they can have a huge vindictive streak, even when it's not warranted. And as the moon individual closes up, the more suspicious that the Pluto partner will get. And they can also be very obsessive, very persistent when it comes to carrying out what they want or getting what they want out of the moon person. And once again, leaving the moon partner on the receiving end of a lot of abuse. This could also create a very codependent relationship where it can be very hard for these two people to part ways and stay apart. So this is also one of the quintessential make up the breakup kind of configurations within Synastry. The moon partner feels like they need the Pluto partner. And a lot of times, once again, this is very calculated. It's a very intentional thing. That's why the Pluto partner plays or comes on so strong. And the Pluto partner wants the moon partner all to themselves. In some extreme cases, I've seen this manifest in stalking, or, maybe where let's say the moon person, for whatever reason, does get the strength to leave, right? Where the Pluto partner will maybe even, you have to put a restraining order on that person. Or where the Pluto person will go through extreme lengths to try to, quote unquote, protect the moon person. Even when it comes to, like, from other people, right? If they are easily triggered or jealous by other people, and this could be the moon person's family, right? Close friends. They'll do whatever they can to eliminate the threat. Or at the very least, control the moon partner so that the moon partner could be on the outs with other people. Now, in less extreme examples, it still yields or renders the moon partner almost kind of helpless to the Pluto partner's tactics, and they can really influence their lives in a lot of ways that they probably don't even really realize, because it's a lot of subconscious programming going on. So an example of this is a Taurus moon man with a Scorpio Pluto woman. So, of course, this would be an opposition here. He's the giver, she's the taker. He seeks familiarity, and she knows that, okay? So he's also one of those people to not really rock the boat. Once he's grown attached to you, he's going to stay with you, even if the relationship has far long past its point of expiration. And the Pluto Scorpio woman is a very smart cookie, okay? She knows this. She also only reveals as much of herself on the surface as she wants him to see. So she can have a lot of secrets, and that's another manifestation of that moon and negative aspect of Pluto. Infidelity could be really, really high, especially on the Pluto person's part. But there could just also be this theme of keeping secrets, having a lot of skeletons in your closet kind of thing. But nonetheless, the Scorpio Pluto woman allows the Taurus moon man to see what he wants to see, and which is good, because Taurus moon men are often very shallow anyway. But this leaves him wide open to having the course of his relationship steered in the direction that she wants it to go in. And a lot of times, in this example, it could be predicated upon financial gain for her. Her decision, the Scorpio Pluto woman, and her decision to be with the Taurus moon man could be very intentional and based on her leeching off of his money. What's yours is mine. And with the Taurus moon man naturally being a provider, and perhaps the Scorpio Pluto woman fits his standards for what he looks for in women, especially aesthetically, right? Because these are also men who can be very picky about the type of woman that they want, but also they like trophy wives and women that they could show off, right? So I mean, it just kind of works hand in hand, right? But it's still a very dysfunctional kind of relationship, and it can also be very codependent. Now, another really bad aspect to have in synastry is Mercury and negative aspect to Mercury. So I will say in this instance, the squares could be a lot more difficult, way more difficult. But essentially, this produces two different ways of thinking and communicating that tend to thwart one another when we're talking about, partners in a relationship. And as most people know, communication is one of the most important things in a relationship. So these partners could have a difficulty coexisting in the same space. They could also be prone to overthinking and like picking each other apart, right? And it could just be very happy to achieve a constant state of satisfaction, or for the two to even be on the same page when it comes to things, right? So an example for this is a Libra Mercury partner with a Cancer Mercury partner. So of course their Mercuries are squaring one another. And in this instance, the Libra Mercury partner is a lot more logical, a lot more rational than the Cancer Mercury individual, who tends to mistake their partner's accommodating disposition for absolute compliance. Cancer is way too in their feelings and takes things very personally, while the Libra Mercury partner can be insensitive, okay? They are fair, not nice, and it's very important to be able to differentiate between the two. But the Libra partner, the Libra Mercury partner, could also find it difficult when it comes to being adequately stimulated from like a mental level, because you have the Cancer Mercury individual who may not like to venture outside of their comfort zone, even when it comes to their interests and the things that they talk about, right? The Cancer Mercury person is very, almost even predictable, right? The things that they're into is kind of, familiar to them. They don't really care about what's going on in the world and politics and what is your theory on this and your theory on that. Of course, unless this person, the Mercury Cancer person, has other factors that could be applicable in the chart, right? But the Libra Mercury partner is like, I care about what's going on. I want to be able to engage in a discourse with my partner and deal with someone who can kind of keep me on my toes intellectually without the conversation becoming too heavy, right? Too weighed down with unnecessary emotion. So it's difficult for these people to even sit down and have the simplest of conversations, because once again, you have the Cancer Mercury person who is, who'll take everything personally. And now the conversation has turned into an argument. And the Libra Mercury person can be petty as hell. So, although they prefer not to get emotions involved, they will have the last word. The Cancer Mercury partner may not understand the Libra Mercury's need to be sociable as well, which could also put another strain on the communication and just in the relationship in general. The Cancer Mercury partner is also very self-absorbed. Meanwhile, the Libra Mercury partner is very cognizant of reciprocity. They're very sensitive to reciprocity, and they can notice when things are off balance. So if there's a dynamic to where they always have to placate and accommodate the Mercury Cancer person and it's not returned, it's going to be a problem. Okay. And no matter how fair and balanced the Libra Mercury partner tries to be, there's always just going to be something that Cancer Mercury person could find wrong, especially once again in the way that they communicate and talk to one another. So the Libra Mercury person feels like they kind of have to walk on eggshells around the Cancer Mercury partner, while the Libra Mercury partner tries to see both sides of an issue on any given occasion, and they're prone to playing devil's advocate also quite often. The Cancer Mercury partner can almost You never put the shoe on the other foot. They have a lot of biases that they're working with. And they could also take it personal and feel like the Libra Mercury partner is against them when they don't automatically and just instinctively cling and take their side of, a perspective, right? So this would be a scenario to where, let's say they're at a dinner and the Mercury Cancer person gets in an argument with someone and they're on the car ride home, right? Which is funny because Mercury deals with cars. And the Cancer Mercury person is like, babe, Sonya was tripping. I told her to go to hell because she said A, B, C, D. And then the Libra Mercury partner is like, listen, okay, I understand what she said pissed you off. But at the same time, you did call her mama a bald-headed hoe when we first came into the house. And this happened and that happened. So y'all were both wrong. And then the Cancer Mercury person is like, what? So whose side are you on here? I thought you were my man. I thought you were, or my girlfriend. I thought you were supposed to love me. What's wrong? Why can't you take my side? Taking it super personal. And next thing you know, left field, hit the fan. And after a point, the Mercury Cancer partner could just really close up or clam up on the Libra Mercury partner, or the Libra Mercury partner could just once again get to a point where they get fed up and become very defensive or even hostile towards their partner. So yeah, big problem. And then finally, the last most, I guess you could say, harmful aspect that you'll tend to find in Synastry is an aspect that I'm almost always talking about on my main YouTube channel, which is the Sun-South Node relationship. Okay, where one partner's sun is conjunct, or God forbid, even in negative aspects to the person's south node. But specifically, for the sake of this video, let's talk about the conjunction, right? The sun being conjunct the other partner's south node. This is very harmful because it could create an effect to where, because you got to think about it, your south node, these are your natural default kind of modes of operating and being, and your way of looking at the world, even your comfort zone, so to speak. But you do it too much, right? These are things that in this lifetime, you're supposed to not completely get away or do away with, but you're supposed to be developing behaviors that are kind of counter that programming. So when a person's sun is conjunct your south node up front, it can create like a very faded kind of feeling. Like when you meet someone and it's like, oh my God, I feel like I've known them all my life. And there could be an instant attraction, right? It's a very karmic relationship, because it's more likely that these two people may have known each other in a past life. So they just may naturally take to one another. However, as the relationship progresses, that sun individual will bring the worst out of that south node person and almost keep them stuck, right? Keep them stuck. And they could be a huge hurdle in their growth and development onto that path of activating their north node. So an example of this is, let's say we have an Aquarius south node male, right? And he gets with an Aquarius sun woman. Now they could have an instant karmic attraction. They could be the best of friends with that Aquarius influence. However, with the Aquarius south node male, this could play out in a couple ways. So one potential circumstance could be that, in this lifetime, he is supposed to be someone who is utilizing his heart space a lot more, being a lot more actively involved in his romantic relationships. Whereas with him getting with a Aquarius sun woman, right, if her sun is conjunct his south node, their relationship might not have a lot of zest. They may be the type of couple to not really do a lot of PDA or be very, just romantic. They may be very void of a lot of spice. Actually, they may be the type of people who come together out of convenience, or who remain together out of convenience, as opposed to sheer love and passion. Her being in his life does not challenge him to use his heart space whatsoever. But another way that this could play out too is, a lot of Aquarius south nodes can be gay, right? So let's say that this is a man who naturally exists on the LGBTQ spectrum, but let's say he's denying it and he gets with a woman, an Aquarius woman, where her sun is on his south node. She could be his beard. She could be someone who, like I said, they could be really good friends, but she doesn't, the relationship that he has with her does not challenge him to accept and live in his truth. I've also seen this play out in, where this couple could have a very dull, very bland sex life, and where the two people may not even be that into each other sexually. And of course, if we're talking about a man who is somewhere on like the B part of the LGBTQ, well, maybe let's say the G, because the B likes either one. But the G in LGBTQ, of course, he wouldn't want to be with the woman, right? So therein lies the lack of passion and sex. And, they could just have a relationship that is just very bland, where both partners are kind of just unavailable to one another. Another example of this is a Leo South Node woman who attracts a Leo Sun male. Now, initially, this could create a situation to where they both hit it off, right? Of course. And she is naturally the type of woman to really want and need a man. She wants a king, which works in a way because the Leo man wants to be treated like a king. However, the Leo South Node woman has a lot of hypermasculine ways herself, and easily this relationship can turn into a struggle for power. Both partners could also be incredibly abusive, and he and his presence in her life could trigger a lot of the karmic debt that she has tied to men. She projects a lot of her daddy issues onto her, and he can in turn model her father. So a lot of these women could have fathers who either weren't there, very abusive, very tyrannical and insensitive themselves. A really good example of this from a celebrity standpoint is Kenya and her, I don't even know what you want to call him. Was he her husband at a certain point? Mark Daly, the man she had a baby with. This could also create a couple where they could come together for the sole purpose of having a baby, and then that's it, which is also very interesting because that's exactly what happened with Kenya. So there's that. So it could seem like it works and that everything is just right, but in the end, it can be incredibly challenging. And it's one of the aspects that I weigh really heavily when I'm doing Synastry readings. So there you go. There you have it. This concludes my video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Feel free to sound off in the comment section below. And of course, make sure you practice unconditional self-love so that you can love others. And until the next video, I holla.